ended up having a cesarean. She's a childbirth educator and the owner of Full Moon's Daughter. So here is Courtney.
So, 11 months ago, I had a cesarean, and I expected and planned to have a home birth. And when that happened, I felt so much shame and embarrassment. And it's still even important to me when I talk about my birth today that people understand that my cesarean wasn't because I was fatigued or dehydrated or because I couldn't do it anymore. And I had so much confusion about what happened. And now I have an incision that's a part of my body that I don't like to touch. My labor started with my water breaking in bed. And for 3 days, my husband and I moved from birth tub to birth ball to walks around the neighborhood. And that labor was everything I wanted. We laughed and we cried, and I felt really well supported. What I didn't want and what I didn't expect was 57 hours of back labor, working through a constriction ring, meconium, rising blood pressure, decels with every contraction, and an operating table. When I knew we had to go to the hospital, I was alone in my bathroom and I feared the worst. And in that moment, I left my body and I didn't come back to it for months. And there's a part of me that's still gone. I thought my baby died twice after we transported, and I didn't tell anyone. I was just too scared. I tried to hide the meconium that was pouring out of my body from the hospital midwife. I was just silent. And I was so angry at everyone who thought I was still going to have a vaginal birth, even the hospital staff, because I knew when I was in that bathroom that I was going to have a cesarean. And after my daughter Lazade was born, I couldn't be around my friends who had home births. I was angry at the other mother in the hospital discharge class until I found out she also had a cesarean. I didn't understand why this happened to me because I was expecting a home birth. That's the only reality that I was set up and prepared to deal with. Everything for the next 6 months after the cesarean took me back to the cesarean. My daughter couldn't latch and I couldn't make milk because I had a cesarean. My daughter had hip dysplasia because she was a surprise breech. I had a cesarean. She had to wear a harness for her hips. I had a cesarean. I had to sleep sitting up for 2 weeks because I had a cesarean. And there were nights when Lazade slept alone in a car seat because I had a cesarean. I couldn't cough, laugh, or sneeze without pain because I had a cesarean. I was alone, I was isolated, I was embarrassed, I was angry, and I was in denial. I had PTSD every time I had to get in a car and drive to a doctor appointment. That's something I had to do frequently because of her hips. I had anxiety every time I had to search for, coordinate, and pick up donor breast milk. I did that 20 hours a week in the first months. And I had postpartum depression that manifested as loneliness and a belief that nothing ever works out for me. That no matter what I do, no matter how much I plan in or believe in something, everything is always going to fall apart. My life felt like it was over because I had a cesarean and I wanted a home birth. But it wasn't. Everything I did in those early months was for survival. It wasn't for healing. I didn't have the postpartum I wanted. Instead of staying home with Lazaday, I was taking her to hip specialists. We were told that she needed to be in a harness 23 hours a day for 4 months. I couldn't cuddle her in a harness, we couldn't be skin to skin in a harness, and she couldn't latch in a harness. I felt like my birth was taken away from me, and then it felt like they were taking away my baby. We removed the harness after a day and a half so that I could hold her again. I don't make milk at all. I tried for 18 weeks. I tried everything from hypnotherapy to prescription drugs, and nothing worked. Lazaday is fed on all donor milk. She has never had formula, and all of her feedings are taken at the breast with a Lactaid. Every time I warmed up another mother's milk in those early months, I was reminded of the cesarean. I felt guilt, I felt shame, I felt like I couldn't provide, and once again, I felt like my body was failing me. I wondered how I could possibly continue with my midwifery studies, because I felt like I couldn't even give birth. I couldn't imagine finding another apprenticeship and sitting at the foot of a birthing mom and not feeling jealousy or rage or like a black cloud of bad luck. This is her story too. I wasn't sure how I was going to teach childbirth classes again, surrounded by the hope and innocence of first-time moms. I thought I was going to have to find a new career because I had a cesarean. My whole world, my whole identity, my whole belief system, my whole physical, emotional, and spiritual body was crashing down around me. I started therapy at 6 weeks postpartum because I didn't think I was going to make it. This is all because I had a cesarean and I wanted a home birth. And I knew that the support I received from my midwives through those first 2 weeks postpartum was more than they would give to a home birth mom. But in the weeks that followed, as I battled through Lazaday's hips, my milk, and the physical and emotional trauma, the care I received left me without enough support. It took me 8 months to share that feedback with my midwives. And it is because of their ability to hear what I had to say that opened up for me the opportunity to speak here. So I'm 11 months into my postpartum time now. And I want to talk about 3 things that would have really helped me, as well as other cesarean moms with whom I've spoken. The first is to have prenatal conversations about transport with all moms, and reinforcing that all forms of birth are valid. The second is to provide moms with a resource list and a care sheet about cesarean prenatally. And the third is to offer moms who do transport an open invitation for feedback. There's a cultural stigma around talking about something negative or something we don't want to hear. And in the home birth world, it's as if talking about a hospital birth might actually lead to a hospital birth. And the truth is, that's not going to happen. Home birth is about empowerment, and we need to empower all mothers with the knowledge that all forms of birth are valid, even those that occur under the knife of a surgeon. Moms will be better served if throughout pregnancy, and not just when filling out the transport plan sheet, they are having realistic conversations with their midwives about the possibility of the birth occurring outside the home. If I had had those prenatal conversations, I would have been more prepared for the physical aspects of the cesarean. I could have known how to get up from a chair with minimal pain and how to remove my steri strips at day 7. I could have had the resources I needed to find a birth trauma therapist when I wanted it. This would have happened because I would have received those resource lists and that aftercare sheet during the prenatal conversations about transport. Instead, what actually happened is I had to call a friend who also had a cesarean to get the information I needed. When I asked for a therapist, I asked twice. Through my own network, I found care providers to help me with pelvic instability and adhesions from the surgery. And on my own, I figured out where the donor milk hubs were and how to navigate them. And it may not seem like a big deal, but to a mom in this situation, every bit of help is huge and every moment is critical. As a home birth turned cesarean mom, I was left floating in an unknown world with no one claiming me. I wasn't a patient of the hospitals, yet I wasn't exactly a client of my midwives. And I needed help navigating my surgery and recovery, and for me that meant information. When I looked at my bookshelf, I had all the standard midwifery texts. And then I had books about tandem nursing and prematurity and miscarriage, but I didn't have one book about cesarean birth and recovery. It takes a long time for a home birth cesarean mom to understand and process what happened to her. And luckily for me, I knew my midwives outside of my pregnancy, and I knew that they would always be open to help me understand what happened. Offering a check-in at 6 months or a year can be really important to these moms. I've talked to many moms who have transported, and they have feedback for you that they aren't sharing because they think it's too late. We all understand that both mom and baby have a story to tell in their birth. When I was standing in my dark back room at 4 in the morning, as the third sunrise of my labor was approaching, I knew the outcome of my birth. It took me months to comprehend that that is Lazade's birth story and that it is a part of who she is. And I'm now just beginning to understand why I needed a cesarean and that it is a part of who I am. And everyone here is going to attend a mom whose cesarean just breaks them open and rips them apart and leaves them exposed for months. I invite you to consider talking to all your clients about transport, providing them with that resource and care information prenatally, and then for those moms who do transport, offering them an open invitation for feedback. I hope that something I shared today can support your efforts as you support their healing and passage. And it is on behalf of myself and these moms that I speak today. Thank you.